Good evening, everyone. I had mentioned before, my name is Mamie Yang. I'm the library director here at the Henry Waldinger Library. Today, we are having a special program, College Getting There from Here, and our guest speaker is Annette Matthew. She's from Edward Jones, a financial advisor there. She's going to make a short presentation to start the program, and then we are going to be able to allow you to have questions and answers, and she'll give you some guidelines of how that's going to work. Okay, so I am going to turn it over to Annette and let her start the program.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Eng. I have to say thank you for even giving me the platform to share with our community. I want to disclose that it doesn't matter who you work with or what you do. I just encourage you to plan. I'm going to have a little shameless plug because I know Ms. Eng doesn't know, but I know that her and her staff, they're like a plethora of resources for our community. So that's why I'm very excited about even having access to her platform. And I'm going to share a tiny little story of my oldest son when he was coming out of second grade and going into third. That first week of school, he started and he's like, how do you spell that? Mom, how do you spell who? And I had like this whole nervous panic attack the first week of school. I ran to the library. I spoke to the head of the children's department, Ms. Coons. I said, Ms. Coons, I don't think he remembers anything from the whole school year because of that break. And I'm really nervous. I don't want him to be behind. Ms. Eng's staff set up a program for my son to read. If anyone knows my son, who's now 11, he's extremely introverted, very quiet, very shy. Not only did the staff help him set up a reading program of things that he wanted, by the end of the school year, by May, he was asking his teacher if he could read for 5 minutes a day to his classmates after lunch. And it was phenomenal because he was in character. I can't remember if it was like Captain Underpants or Dory Explored Phantasmagory, but he went from like not being able to read as well to being 2 grade levels above and sharing his books with his classmates. So I have to say thank you because you've been you and your staff have been like a key part of my journey here at Valley Stream with my community and my kids. So thank you for all the hard work. Okay, my name's Annette Ravello. My married name is Annette Matthew. I've been a resident for a little bit over 6 years. I've been working in financial services, and this is how I'm going to date myself, since 1999. And I've been with this group for the past 3 years. And I'm going to try to walk our families through how we can save. This is a little bit of an outdated pitch because the laws have changed this year, and I'll show you where they're changed. It says college, but it's really educational focused. So if your child doesn't go the college route and wants to go to a technical school, this is also for them. Okay, so it should really be education, getting there from here. It doesn't have to be for college. Okay, it's just my name. This is a shameless plug of how I work with families. I usually set up a plan. We talk about where you're at financially, what your goals are. I kind of put something together. And then at least once a year, I help you stay on track. If we don't speak because the year went crazy, we do regroup once a year to see what the assumptions were for your financial goals for you and your family. And then we regroup to see if anything has to be tweaked. So that's like my 5-step process. The cost of college. This, as I mentioned, was actually based on 2022-23 data, and this is 2024. So what's this saying? Whether your child goes to a community college, trade schools are probably closer to the public university cost, depending on the trade and the school and the length, or private university. If my son or my daughter is born this year, by the time that 10 years, actually, let's make believe I have an 8-year-old and I have 10 years to save. The cost of private school, public school, trade school, and community colleges actually grow between 4 and 5%, which is 1 to 2 points higher than our regular inflation rate, which is 3% target. We all know what inflation is now because we feel it when we check out at Aldi and at Trader Joe's and at Walmart and at BJ's. So the cost of school actually grows faster than the rest of our family living expenses. So in 10 years or in 18 years, if my son was just born this year, that same $4,000 education becomes 8, it doubles. If it's a public university or trade school, you go from roughly 30,000 to almost 56. And if you're going to a private school, and I know I graduated from St. John's and it's $60,000 a year now, in 10 years, it'll be closer to 85. And in 18 years, that same school will be over $100,000. So this is just a summary of how it grows faster than inflation, okay? There's 2 ways to pay for college. I went the traditional route. I borrowed. I said, I'll figure it out when I get there. So if I go in and my first year I have $35,000 tuition, and I'm going to say the interest rate is 5%, and I pay them back over the 10 years that they give me, I would have paid them back over $44,000 for that same 35 that I borrowed. The bank or the institution would have gotten back a little bit under $10,000 just to give me $35,000 for 1 year of school. And my monthly payments would have been roughly $375 a month. Now, if my son is 8 and I only have 10 years to save, and I put aside $200 a month, average return of 7%, by the time my son gets to college in 10 years, I would have had that first year of tuition, but I would have only put 24 out of pocket because roughly 11,000 would have been earning. And this doesn't include the savings you get on a tax basis. So that's just like a concept of the 2 ways. You either borrow or you save. Obviously, I'm trying to encourage the yellow box to save. Financial aid has also changed since this presentation, and within the last year, a lot of the changes were in 2024. But the data is still reflective of the reality, right? What we consider financial aid is all the money that gets thrown to our children for trade school or for college, right? Whether it's community college or 4-year college. This picture is showing that the 2 biggest chunks are in the gray. So the gray is the school, the institution giving your child money in grants or in scholarship. If you notice, that's 32% of the full financial aid picture. However, if you look at the yellow, the biggest chunk is actually 35% in federal student loans. So between the schools and federal Pell Grants, it's not sufficient. The biggest chunk of people are borrowing money to be able to go to college. And we're trying to minimize how much you're borrowing, right? You don't pay back your work study, and employers, if they do pay for college, I got my MBA and it was paid for from EIG. I actually had to at least work for them for 2 years after I graduated. So a lot of companies will commit you to some time after they pay for your school. What's going on in our lives, right? If you don't know the stats, our money, the same paycheck we get every day, you're competing with paying taxes, saving for your emergencies, car payments, mortgages. I pay health insurance out of pocket. Some people don't, but I pay on $5,000 to $7,000 a year for copays. How do I save for college? I also want to go on vacation. I also have to save for my retirement. So we have all these competing demands, and the trend has been that families are starting much later in life. So some of us, me included, will have a child starting college when I'm supposed to be retiring. So, you know, it's that retirement bucket versus that college savings bucket. Who takes precedent and how do we prioritize it, right? Because we only have but a finite window of time. What is this saying? I'm not going to get into the numbers. It's if you save a little bit today, because we have an 18 or 10-year horizon, just with the fact of compound interest and dividend repayments and your money growing and working for you, just a little bit today can imply a lot more in income later on in life, not just for retirement, but also for college savings or educational savings. So what's like the key message, right?
College.
What's the key message? The key message is if you can figure out what's a manageable amount to set aside, and it can come from different sources, right? families, aunts, uncles. I actually got a phenomenal birthday invitation from a parent saying, in lieu of gifting my child a, I don't know, a toy or a Robux card or whatever they're called, I welcomely take any donations in any amount for my child's 529 account. Super creative. So anyone can fund a college account, right? You can also, if you have younger children, the same amount of money that you were putting away for childcare, for those daycare costs, you can actually, if you're used to that, if you're used to chunking out those, $1,100, $1,200 a month, you can actually use that money to continue to fund your child's college if you've gotten used to that not being in your budget. Or you can actually invest regularly with chunks of money at a time. So if your family happens to be one that gets large refunds, you can always say at the beginning of the year, after you do your taxes, here's $1,000, here's $3,000, let's put it away to the kids' college. And then you don't even have to worry about the rest of the year if that's what you were going to contribute for that year. So the key message is, if you can just plan to drop in money when you can, with the frequency that works with you, with the budget that works for you, with incorporating birthdays and communions and all these chunks of money, you can have a nice sizable account for your child by the time they're 18 or 19 and starting any type of schooling. What's the big plug? I'm a fan of keeping as much as we can in our pocket, legally allowable by law, if Uncle Sam gives us a tax break. So when it comes to certain types of accounts, you might be able to get a state deduction and a federal deduction in some cases. And it's just similar to our retirement plans. The money is growing tax-free until you have to pull it out. And if you use it for what it's intended, you don't pay any money on the money you made. So you imagine that picture of $24,000 in a normal account. If I save $200 a month over 10 years and pull out $35,000, Uncle Sam's going to say, hey, give me my piece of taxes on the $11,000 that you made. With certain accounts, they're going to say, you know what, I'm going to waive you that. You don't owe us any taxes if you use the money for what you intended to use it for. So these are the two main accounts outside of regular savings accounts. So if you go to your local Jovia, you can probably get, I think they call it a dog. I forgot the name. They have a name for the kids' accounts that get you like 1 or 2% a month. That's a regular savings account in a credit union. Commercial banks also have savings accounts for children, but you might be getting 1, if you're lucky, 2% on whatever cash you're putting into that child's bank account. So it's not going to outpace inflation. So theoretically, you're losing money because things get more expensive and the interest you're getting is too late. So we're going to talk about custodial accounts and 529 accounts, because I have parents that either do both or pick one or the other. For those of you that never heard the term custodial accounts, you might have heard UGMAs, UGMAs, or UTMAs. They're all synonyms for investment accounts for minors, either under the age of 18 or 21, depending on the state and where you reside. So it's just an investment account for a minor. All of these other technical terms, the acronyms stand for certain things, but it's just an investment account for someone that's still a minor. So what happens if you're not sure about the 529 and you're more like, you know what, I don't want any strings attached. I want to be able to put money away and take it out when I want to for my child, when I need it for whatever reason. You should then open a custodial account. Why? Anybody can contribute to the account. Yourself, your parents, family, friends. You have no limits on how you use the money. That's what the distribution is. It doesn't have to be for school. If they're going to buy their first home, you can use that money. If they need to buy a car, you can use that money. The control is a key thing, though. When you open up a custodial account, when the child reaches of age, technically they are the owners of that account, because you're opening it on their behalf until they become adults. And the only contribution limits you have on custodial accounts, there really are none. You just have to be aware that if you give anybody in 2024 more than $18,000, the IRS is going to come knocking and say, hey, there's something called the gift tax. So you got a $19,000 or $20,000 gift, you got to give me a piece of that on taxes on anything in excess of 18. So there are no limits, but there are IRS tax gift limits, okay? And then the tax treatment, it's just really a question with your tax person, because when you do pull out the money, you will pay taxes on the earnings, but that's different for every type of investment that you make. So that's really an accounting question, but you don't necessarily get certain tax deductions or breaks. It's just regular income tax or capital gains taxes, okay? I'm going to say to hold all the questions till the end, so just start taking notes in case you want to come back to any of these topics. Second way to save for college. I usually just talk about these two because savings are savings are savings, and we all know how that works in a bank. Who can contribute to a 529? Same thing, anybody, grandparents, parents, guardians, neighbors, friends, anybody can contribute. The use of distributions, what does that mean? When you pull out that money, so long as you pull it out for expenses related to that child's education, so they're called, qualified expenses, you will not suffer any penalties or taxes. So the use of the distribution from this 529 has to be towards their education, okay? So we can't really use the money to buy a car because the IRS is gonna look into this, right? Who controls it? The parent. When do they control it? Or whoever opened the account, the guardian. They control it forever. Why? When you open up a 529, that is your account for the benefit of a minor. But you get to control that, oh, my oldest got a full ride. What do I do with this $20,000? I can give it to their sibling. You know what? Dad's going back to school. We didn't use that money. We can give it to another relative. You can give it to a niece. So not only do you control that money, unlike the custodial account that once they reach the adult maturity age in that state, they will just release that and make sure the child handles that money. The 529 is always controlled by the person who opens it. And they get to control what happens with it during the lifetime of the money sitting there. Contribution limits are the same. You don't really have limits, but anything above 18,000, the IRS is gonna come knocking. But the 529 has a trick that the other accounts, or really no other accounts, have. Because we only have a good 18-year time span to save for college, the IRS gives every parent an exception. If they would like to contribute for 5 years of college in one shot, they can let you put away up to $90,000 without you incurring that gift rule, only in the 529s. So if I go to the bank and I drop in $90,000 in a savings account, I'm going to get taxed, everything in excess of 18. If I open a custodial account and drop in $90,000, I'm going to get taxed. If you open up a 529 and happen to have $90,000 lying around, you actually get, there's a form you have to fill out, but the IRS waives from you getting taxed on anything in excess of 18. However, you cannot contribute for the next 5 years. You'll be like, why do you do that then, Annette? Because I have an extra chunk of money that will be growing while I'm not contributing. So it's just that, like, it'll grow faster, right? And harder because you have a longer window. And again, the tax treatments are, if you pull it out for qualified educational expenses, you're not going to get penalized to any capacity. So there's one, because I'm actually almost done, which is crazy. It's 13, it will be about 15 minutes in. In 2024, the federal government changed the way 529 monies can be, I guess, utilized if they don't use it for college. So let's say I only have one kid, I don't have anybody else to give it to, and you're sitting with $5, $10, $20, $30,000 sitting in a 529. Because it grows tax deferred and tax free, the IRS set up a rule that if the money is sitting in that account for a certain amount of years, you are able to convert this to a Roth IRA for that individual. So that would effectively be, as if you set up a retirement account for your child from the day they were born or from when they were children. And they pull out that money at the age of 59 and a half. You're going to say, big deal, Annette. What does that mean? If you retire and you have a pension, you're going to pay taxes on that pension. If you are retired and you get Social Security income and other income, you will pay taxes on your Social Security. If you have an IRA and a 401k, a 457, a 403, a 403b, any of the fours, when you take out that money, you will pay taxes. Okay, I have investment properties. Guess what? You pay taxes on the rental income of your investment properties. The only freebie we have from the IRS is called a Roth. And if you make more than a certain amount of money, you're not allowed to contribute to a Roth because you're at a higher income tax, and that's a very much a middle class tool. I think you have to be making roughly less than $150,000 a year. Imagine gifting a child tax-free money that Uncle Sam doesn't touch if they hold on to it. There's also another plus. If they're purchasing their first home, they can take out up to $10,000 penalty-free from that Roth. Not tax-free, penalty-free, because you didn't really use it for retirement, because a Roth is a retirement account. So there are a lot of laws that changed and started in this year, January of 2024, for the 529s that make it even more attractive. So you get a tax break, a tax deduction. You can gift up to $18,000 without paying federal taxes. You can gift it to another family member. If none of the monies are needed or used, after a certain amount of period, you could turn it into a Roth. They can take out some money to buy their first home, or that could just be their retirement account by the time they hit 60, where when they take out that money, they're not paying any taxes. So there's a lot of pluses to the 529. And again, you could also use it for trade school. And in some instances, you can use it for private high school, however, or boarding school. However, on a state level, there may be tax implications. So you really have to talk to a tax professional if for some reason you needed the monies for boarding school or high school. Okay, I'm gonna have about a few slides on Q&A, and then I'll ask Ms. Eng when I'm done pretty much to open it to Q&A. And if all goes well, we'll be, hopefully better educated and hear less than an hour that we have allocated. Can I use my 529s for a college out of state? Absolutely. So long as it's an accredited institution, so it's recognized by FAFSA, right? And it's for qualified expenses. And they'll tell you, these are the type of expenses that are considered qualified. And it's across the entire US. I don't know which schools abroad, but here it says some schools abroad. If my child decides not to go to college, will I lose the savings in my 529 plan? No, I already mentioned that you can transfer it to another family member. You can hold on to it and convert it to a Roth after a certain amount of years, and then maybe even tap into your Roth for other capabilities after it's been growing for a certain amount. Technically, you can take a non-qualified withdrawal. So if you're like, I don't want to do any of that, I just want my money, and you have $10,000 there, two things are going to happen. You are going to have a 10% penalty if you take the $10,000 and buy a car instead of paying for educational costs. You're going to pay a 10% penalty. So out of that $10,000, Uncle Sam's going to take $1,000, and you will pay ordinary income taxes. So if you happen to have made $90,000 that year, it's going to report to the IRS like you actually had an additional 10. So you're going to get taxed at a higher income tax bracket and pay taxes on the 10,000 you took out. So it's like a double whammy, similar to when we retire money out of our IRAs or 401ks and not being of retirement age. How is this going to affect my child's financial aid? Again, financial aid changed this year, earlier in 2024. So I'm just going to explain the theory, hoping that it sinks in. When you are a parent, a guardian, or a married couple, and the schools are looking, FAFSA's looking at your financial aid contribution for your child, they're going to take in all of your income, all of your savings, as well as all of the expenses, right? We can't assume that if the family makes $100,000, they're going to give $100,000 for little Annette to go to college. That's not the way it works. So FAFSA is going to take out what the day-to-day expenses are, understand if you have a bigger family, if you have 3 kids, what your debt is, what your mortgage is, and they're going to say, okay, you know, Annette, Pete, out of all the money you make out of this 100, we expect you to contribute 25% of your income to the kids' college. You know, you should be able to put away $25,000 a year. When you own that asset, that 529 is sitting in your universe. So only a piece of that is what they're expecting to contribute to college. When your child has a savings account or a brokerage account, if I have $10,000 and I'm 9 years old and I'm Annette, when we report to FAFSA, FAFSA is expecting 100% of your kids' money to go to college. Why? Because they don't have other mouths to feed. They're not paying a mortgage. They don't have a car note. So the weighting is significantly different when the parents or guardians own the assets versus the children. So it's actually favorable to an extent, okay? Because they know the money's there and they know what it's there for. But during the years you've been saving, you've been getting tax deductions, unless you live in a state like Florida or Texas, where you don't get state tax deductions for 529s. So the question is, it depends, is the answer really. I think this is my last, okay, I have 2 more. What happens if my kid gets a scholarship? Am I gonna get a penalty if I tap into my 529? This is actually pretty cool. So if your kid gets a scholarship, but they still need to go into the 529, and let's say the scholarship is $20,000, you're allowed to take out of your 529 the same amount that they got in scholarships, okay? And you're gonna be waived the penalty, that 10% penalty. You will pay taxes on the money you took out. However, you do not pay the 10% penalty. And you do get to take out the same amount that was given to your child in scholarship money, okay? And I think this is my last question. Oh, this is outdated. This is how you know it's outdated. Should I use my Roth to pay for college? The short answer is no. You really shouldn't use retirement money. I mean, I guess I'll say it depends. This you should talk individually with a financial advisor if you should use your Roth retirement for kids' college. However, really a Roth is set up for retirement. So there's going to be a lot of consequences if you withdraw money from here for a child's college. I'm going to summarize it that way because this is a little bit outdated. What's the main message, Annette? You've been through 24 slides in 12 minutes. What am I going to go away with? You have to start today, even if you start small. You got to be consistent and intentional and put that money aside every month. You have to take advantage if your state gives you tax credits on the money growing tax-free and you getting a state deduction. And then that's it. Look at the time horizon, sit down with an individual that understands this and say, what should I do? Little Johnny's 8 years old. I have 10 years to figure it out. What can I do within my means so that when you get to college or trade school, there's something there and you're not fully borrowing all of that money. So Mrs. Zhang, I'm good. I don't know if, I guess I'm going to say thank you so much for the time. Thank you. We're all busy feeding families, running around, full-time jobs. We're all busy. So I do thank everyone who attended for being here.